Yeah, it really was a perfect storm last year.
Graphics were awesome.
We had a perfect
Those
storm.
graphics were sweet though. I'm not gonna lie. Like
Those graphics literally inspired me to make graphics.
Yeah. Welcome to another episode of Boom or Bust, the draft show. Max Chadwick alongside Nick Merriam and Donny Clemons, our top 10 linebackers in the 2022 NFL draft. And this is going to be a fun one. I think this linebacker class is actually pretty darn good, so I'm really excited for this one. Before we start the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. Be sure to follow our TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, at Boom or Bust Draft. We're on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcast, so subscribe and rate us 5 stars. And check out the merch store. And this is not part of the merch store, but Donnie custom made this Boom or Bust hat, and I think it's too awesome to not show the viewers. Donnie, why don't you show them what it says right there?
So we got the logo on the front, which is, it's just classic logo. And then on the side of it, you have, I don't know if you guys can see it, you have Boom.
Yep.
Or
I love
Bust.
the or on the back. Just imagine someone walking behind Donnie. It just says or. It's like, what are you talking about? I love that. And that's not in our merch store. But he custom made that because he thought it was sick, and he had a buddy at a shop that helped him out with that. So if you custom make our merch, please, like, if you feel so inclined, please send us money for using our stuff. Or you can go to the merch store. We have merch there, so you can buy merch.
I can use it without having to pay them. I work here.
Something about workers' rights. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, something about copyright. Let's just not get it. Yeah.
So again, please pay us the money that you make from WinView, who is the presenting sponsor of Boom or Bust the Draft Show. The best thing to happen to sports since fantasy. It is a new way to bet on sports. I used it for the national championship game. Kansas, who screwed me over, who I thought Kansas was going to win, so I bet them -4, and then they ended up winning by 3, which is brutal. But gone are the days where all you can do are bet on sports, over-unders, money lines, or player props. So instead of betting on spreads, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm only using WinView, because with WinView, you can bet on singular events live during games. Like last night, for example, will UNC miss his three-pointer? And I knew, hey, Caleb Love was probably going to shoot the three-pointer, and he was ice cold last night, and he missed, and I would have won money on that. Or like, will the Cowboys score a touchdown on this drive? Will this at-bat be a strikeout? You can bet on all of those things, just singular events, which is so cool. You don't have to wait for the end of the game to find out whether or not you won your bets. You can place a ton of bets during the game. You can make bets like these and more on the WinView app, play for free or for fun, or if you want to like risk a little cheddar, enter cash prize contests against other users. All you have to do is answer props before and during the game, and it's so easy. And all you have to do to sign up is click on the link in our description or in our pinned comment on YouTube as well. Become a part of the new way to bet on sports today with WinView. So let's start our top 10 linebackers in this year's draft. And Nick starts off with our number 10 linebacker.
So number 10 is Brian Asamoah, linebacker from Oklahoma, who measures out very similar to Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah last year, 6'2", 226. Was lauded for his athleticism, which, as it turns out, is not maybe as good as we thought initially. It's 88th percentile, so it's really good, but it's not maybe like 98th, which is kind of what I was expecting. And it's the type of thing there that with his testing that makes me, I'm not a big fan of Brian Asamoah, quite frankly. I have him as a late 3rd round guy, maybe early 4th round guy. But I think this is a real gamble if you're taking him, and you have to be very confident in your ability to develop a linebacker as well as your need for a will linebacker in this case, because I think that is what he's going to play at the next level. I will compare him to Jamin Davis because I think it's like a similar type of thing where he is very athletic and you see the flashes. But I think, and I was not a fan of Jamin Davis last year. Notably, I had him 64th on my board. I did not like the pick for Washington. I think Brian Asamoah is a worse football player right now than Jamin Davis was coming out. So, and I think that says a lot, honestly. And he does flash some athleticism at times. You see the speed and agility mostly. He did call some signals from Oklahoma at times, although I don't think he'll end up playing Mike ever because of his size. And because I think he's, easily overpowered, which was a problem with Jamin, and the reason he's not going to play Mike this year. He just could not deal with contact from offensive linemen in the box. And he's not, quite frankly, like, he's a good athlete, but he's not. Maybe I should have known that he wasn't going to test out as well because I have it written in my notes before he even tested. he's not good enough to just avoid contact the way Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah did. He just avoided contact. Now, he was also stronger, I think, than Asamoah is. But I don't know. This is one of those where it's just like, this guy's a great athlete. Every once in a while, like, his speed shows up in the pass rush. He can chase down guys in ways other guys can't. Sometimes he makes a coverage play that other guys can't. I don't really know what you're looking for other than like some weird scenario where it all just comes together and becomes an excellent player. Other than that, like, this is a really high floor special teamer, in my opinion, which is what a lot of, quite frankly, like, I don't think this is talked about enough. A lot of linebackers pick 90 and later are just special team picks. Like, they are picked to play special teams. And that's kind of what you're looking at here, in my opinion, with Brian Asamoah. And that's not a bad thing. Like, you need special teamers. And you know, as a depth guy, he'll be, you know, good for any team that needs athletes in their linebacker room.
So number 9, and I'm going to give you guys a heads up right now. There's about 1 million Georgia defensive players in this video, so just be prepared for it. And let's get to the first one. Quay Walker, the linebacker from Georgia. First of many on this list, just like I said. So Quay Walker, to me, is definitely the worst out of the 3, but I do think he's close to one of his teammates, and then the third one is just kind of like way above the rest of them, in my opinion. But I do like Quay Walker a lot. I think he's a decent coverage player. I thought all of them were actually pretty good in coverage. Well, obviously the top one I think is fantastic, but I think they're all pretty solid in coverage. Good run defender as well. I mean, you saw it yourself. That Georgia defense was some of the best run defense we've ever seen from a college football team. I mean, it was unstoppable. Like, they had to, I mean, like, for example, like, once Jamison Williams got hurt for Alabama, it was useless. Like, it was gone. It was over. Of course, Georgia was going to win that game. So, good run defender as well, just like I said. Good athlete. Tested way better than I thought he would. Tested in the 97th percentile, which stunned me. Like, I knew all 3 of them were athletic. I wasn't expecting that. I was not expecting that. I was expecting maybe low 90s, and he tested in the high 90s, which we've said this before. We have questions about whether these numbers may or may not be kind of accurate or not, because it's kind of ridiculous how many people tested very highly. But, I mean, the numbers are the numbers, and you can't really complain about them, I guess. But, I mean, that's all there is to say. Also, this guy is useless, and I mean useless as a pass rusher. Do not have this guy blitzing whatsoever, because every time I watch him, he's useless. Like, he'll get blocked up, and there is no possible way he can get past any offensive lineman. At least that's what I've seen. I think this guy is useless as a pass rusher. But that's also, like, one of the less important things for a linebacker, so it doesn't really matter that much. I think he's a good depth piece who could eventually maybe become a starter because of how athletic he is. I have an early 3rd-round grade on him. I like this linebacker class a lot. I really, really do. I think this is a really good one. Maybe not as good as last year's, but still pretty good. So overall, I do like Quay Walker, but I do think he is the worst Georgia linebacker out of the 3, but he's still a guy who could become a low-end starter down the line.
It is absurd that we have 3 Georgia linebackers in our top 10.
And we had 2 Georgia D tackles and a Georgia edge rusher. And be on the lookout for upcoming videos. There'll be another Georgia player soon.
Yeah, there definitely will be another Georgia. This defense is all like 3. Like, you can't even like start all of those guys basically in that Georgia defense. It's unbelievable. And the guy who didn't really play that much until this year, and I actually have his linebacker 5 in this year's draft, is another Georgia player, Tindall. I fell in love with this tape, man. I started watching him more and more, and I love him. He's first of all, a phenomenal athlete, like one of the best athletes in this year's draft. I believe tested out, 97th percentile athlete, which is honestly not there are still 2 more guys we're going to get to that are better, which is unbelievable. But Tindall, his speed is ridiculous. He ran a 4.47 at the combine at 6'2", 230 pounds. Like, he can fly. He's explosive. He had a 42-inch vertical too. That's what Derek Stingley's Jr. reportedly had in high school, and that's an amazing vertical for a corner. Like that, Channing Tindall is just a freak athlete. I'm a big fan of his game. Like I said, the elite speed shows up. Like, he's going to sideline, 1,000,000 miles an hour, which I loved. Actually, I saw that from all 3 Georgia linebackers. Like, they really pin their ears back and they go all out. And there's a guy we're going to get to a lot later on this list who I think does it the best. Because sometimes that Channing Tindall plays a little wild. You know, he's going 100 miles an hour, and he can sometimes take himself completely out of plays at times. I think he's a very good coverage player because he's a super athlete. Not the biggest. 230 pounds is obviously a little less than you'd hope for a linebacker. but he's really good in coverage. Doesn't really make a lot of plays, though, on the ball. He's kind of just a guy who's going to shut down whoever he's guarding. And
which is fine.
Yeah, you don't see like a lot of forced incompletions or a lot of interceptions on his tape. He's just a guy who's a really good coverage player, which honestly is fine. He's a pretty decent run defender. He's a good pass rusher, really, really good tackler. Didn't miss a lot of tackles on his tape, but he never really started. And like he didn't even like start this year even. Like he played like 474 snaps according to PFF. The 2 years before that, he played 75 snaps the year before and 58 snaps the year before that. Like this guy was barely cracking the rotation for Georgia. So that is something to keep in mind for a guy who's, I think is a top 5 linebacker in this draft. But I really do like Channing Tindall a lot, and I think I would take him on day 2 and maybe even the second round just because that athleticism is so ridiculous, and I think his coverage is so good. He's a good pass rusher, and he's a good run defender. Like, I'm a huge, huge fan of Channing Tindall, and I think if he can play a little more under control while also utilizing that ridiculous speed, that explosiveness that he has, like this guy can be a quality starting linebacker down the line.
Fast linebackers.
Yeah, I like Tindall's upside too. I think there was some nice flashes at the end of his time there at Georgia, especially in big games.
Mm-hmm.
Number 7 linebacker on our board is the Alabama linebacker Christian Harris. Donnie's right in the middle with him as linebacker 6 on his board. This might be the biggest spread we've had between two people on one player. I have him as linebacker 3. Max is all the way down at linebacker 10. We had discussions early in the year of just like, people had him as like a top 10 player, which I was never on board with and still am not on board with. And we were right. Like, he's not a top 10 player. Look at this. Like, wow. You should watch the show. Have I mentioned that? We do a good job with our preseason stuff.
Minus the moment, yeah.
But he had a really good year. Like, I was kind of blown away at what I saw from him this year, in my opinion. As he developed, I thought he became... And now we're going to end up talking about how he might end up falling down my board when I go reevaluate the linebacker position. But he's a Mike, right? Like, that's what he plays. The issue is now he got weighed in at 226. He's 6'1", 226. And the last few linebackers we've seen come out at that weight are not Mikes at the NFL level. You have to deal with offensive linemen, and they have such a size advantage that it's very difficult to take them on. Now, he is just so twitched up and strong for his size that he was just the middle field disruptor for Alabama all season long. I don't think he's like a great zone coverage player. I think he does fine, but his real ability is just shooting gaps in the run game and blitzing. And it's just, he is just a head down, run through you, run around you, using speed, bend. He's like an edge rusher that plays in the middle of the field. And quite frankly, like I'm trying to think, like a comparison that comes off the top of my head. I forget his name. He was the Texas edge rusher last year who played linebacker. He was bigger.
Joseph Osai.
Joseph Osai. It's like that, except for this guy is like more a linebacker than Osai is, and I think is more built to play linebacker. He tested well, 90th percentile. That's about what I expected from him. He's experienced. He's played for a very long time. There's some issues, like he doesn't play in the slot ever. Like, he's got more D-line snaps than he does in the slot. This is, again, he's a guy that plays the box, and that's going to create some question marks just because you have to find a way to get this guy at Mike in the NFL level, and the size is concerned. I think that he's going to add weight. I think he has to. He might, have lost weight for testing, which is, I think, a thing that a lot of players are doing now is like shedding 10 pounds to run a fast 40 and then adding it back, which is ridiculous. But, they have these trainers that are doing that and making it work for him, I guess, whatever. He's very different prospect, but I don't know. I like it. Like, I think it works. I can't really explain it other than that. I just think that if a team that is creative with their defense can put this guy in a situation to, especially on third downs, to take advantage of kind of a downhill mentality, he could really, really, really be an impactful linebacker at the next level. And more so even than some other athletic guys who I think play full roles, like a Devin White, for example, where you kind of need to put them in like the perfect scenario, based on what the offense is doing. Like, you need to hope they do something that allows them to make a play. I think Harris can kind of create on his own.
Interesting.
He's better than Dylan Moses.
Yes, he is.
I forgot. We wanted to mention Moses, and I don't think they're on the same level. Yeah, no.
No, it's not. I don't think it's the same level. What I will say though is, I don't think it might be an Alabama thing. Because I think Christian Harris is maybe the worst linebacker that I've watched in coverage. And maybe it's now because Dylan Moses was also a huge liability. So maybe it's the way their defense is structured. But maybe I'm underrating Christian Harris a little bit because maybe it's just the defense and that kind of screwed him. But I don't know. I have huge questions with Christian Harris in coverage. And I agree that he's a really good tackler. He's a good run defender. I don't know. The coverage was so bad that I couldn't ignore that.
And then I'm like right in the middle of both of them.
Yeah.
So.
This is actually, we mentioned this before. This is the first video where our top 10, all of us have in our top 10. It's just a different order.
Yep.
So I don't think we've ever had that before.
First time ever. So yeah, I mean that's honestly kind of like crazy to me. Like there's a lot of good linebackers in this draft. Mm-hmm. Like we're definitely leaving off some decent players.
Like Darian Beavers, just a spoiler, did not make it, and like I thought he was going to make at least one of ours in the top 10.
Exactly, I did too. Like I was expecting all of you guys to have him in your top 10, and I thought I'd be the low man on him, but I guess not.
Yeah. I am actually up next here with our number 6 linebacker. That is Chad Muma, the Wyoming linebacker. Big fan. I mean, you get like Logan Wilson vibes, man. Remember how awesome Logan Wilson was at Wyoming? Like Chad Muma is like that too. And the one stat that gets brought up for linebackers all the time, that is the worst freaking stat to bring up, but I think it actually is like kind of ridiculous in this, is tackles. And Chad Muma over his career averaged 11 tackles a game, which
that's absurd.
Is a horrible stat. Don't use it for anything, like when you're saying how good a defensive player is. But that does show you that, hey, Chad Muma is around the football a lot, and he has been a phenomenal football player for Wyoming. Other than the tackles, which, like I said before, is bad. He's a 98th percentile athlete, which is fantastic. Like we keep mentioning the athleticism for every single video. Linebacker is one position where you need it. If you're not a good athlete, like I'm dropping you so far down my board. I don't care how good your tape was, because you need really good athleticism in today's day and age, especially with how much defenses ask linebackers to do. They ask to be a blitzer. They ask to be taking on blocks, taking on being in the run game, in coverage. Like you have to do literally every single thing that any other defender has to do. So it's the hardest position to play on defense by far, in my opinion. So you need really good athletes, and Chad Muma is certainly one of them. He's a really good tackler. He's just a really smart player overall. Took his game to a whole new level this year. But he's at Wyoming, obviously low level of competition. Did not really look that impressive at the Senior Bowl, although few linebackers do at the Senior Bowl. It's really not an event designed for linebackers. He's not really great taking on blocks. You know, sometimes he gets taken down by cut blocks. Not the most physical player, but he has amazing instincts. And I think he'll be a quality starter down the line. And he's a really good athlete. And I don't know. I just think he's got the smarts and the athleticism, and that's a really good combo. Maybe not the most physical player, but I think Chad Muma will be a quality linebacker down the line for some team.
Brandon Smith ends up being our number 5. Donnie is high man on him. He's got him number 4. I got him 8. I don't hate Brandon Smith. I just I don't know. Maybe I've been burned by Jamin Davis, and I just don't want these athletic linebackers who haven't shown me enough on the field. And that being said, I think there's a pretty sizable gap between Brandon Smith as a prospect and Brian Asamoah. I think you see things on tape that he does more consistently that a lot of other guys can't do. One thing is, I didn't think he was that big. It turns out he's like 250 pounds, which is crazy. It must be in his legs, and he must be more condensed or more dense than most other players are. Some people are like that, they don't look big, but their muscle mass is just tremendous, and it works for them. This is a guy I think can play any position linebacker. Will, Sam, Mike. I think he can put him anywhere, and it will work. He can run with running backs in coverage of the flats. I think he does great job covering, there. I don't know if he's, the type of guy you're going to line up and match up with tight ends, but I think in terms of some of the lesser jobs in coverage, he does a good job. Does a good job getting the right depth in zone drops. I think he has pretty good coverage instincts in zone. It's not something that always translates to the NFL, but it's there. It's something that could, happen. I did have some issues. I think him navigating traffic, he loses the ball carrier at times, but outside the box, I think you see the speed flash. There are plays where he is chasing down players downfield who are just I'm trying to remember who. There's a play on his tape where he catches Jackson Smith and Jigba, which just shouldn't happen for a linebacker, right? So that's impressive. And although it was reported that he ran a 4.38 40 in high school, and then he ends up running a 4.52 at the combine, so obviously that was fake. A lot of that's actually a discussion I had work the other day is that a lot of high school recruits will put in like their bios that they run 4.4s, and the reason they do that is because speed coaches just tell them to put it in their like Twitter bios, and it's completely not real. Like, don't believe any of that. It's so fake. But yeah, the guy is just a.
I'm changing my bio right now.
Yeah. Right now we're all just like 4.3 speed, like
100 percentile athlete over here. Come on now.
Huge. Draft me, please. I just think if we're talking about raw athleticism at the linebacker position, this is a guy that uses it better than most. I don't think he's on the level of even Jamin, though. I don't know. Like, they're similar. Like, I have like similar grades with them coming out. But again, it's like this is a guy that's a great athlete. He more consistently shows it than kind of those mid-round guys where you're just like, that's an athlete. Let's draft and see what happens. But there's still question marks.
Yeah.
And I just the tough thing I have with like linebackers is just it's not that valuable of a position anymore in the NFL. And I don't like as much like just throwing picks at these athletes and hoping they'll work when the payoff is not going to be like tremendous. But I do think that he's special. I think he clearly showed that at the combine, 99.8th percentile, which is excellent. You know, he can't do much better than that, obviously. And he did play well enough in college that I think he ends up being a day 2 pick for sure.
I'm a sucker for big, versatile, athletic coverage linebackers because those are all things you can't teach.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm so high on him because it's like I've said, the ceiling on him is absurd. That's why I have him so high. I think his ceiling is higher than every person that I have put before him on my ranking, and then the people ahead of him, I think, either way, way safer picks or arguably a higher ceiling than him, which is rare. But I'm a sucker for big athletic coverage linebackers. Like I was a sucker for Jamin Davis. I had a late first round grade on Jamin Davis because I was like, you can't teach that athleticism. I don't really care about recruits, but when you have the pedigree of a 5-star recruit and you are that athletic, I do care about it a little bit. And then also, like I said, I think he's great in coverage. Okay, let me rephrase. I think he's good in coverage. I think he's really, really good in coverage. In the box, he's useless. But I think as a coverage player, I think he's really good. And coverage is by far the hardest thing to teach a linebacker. Like, by far the hardest thing, in my opinion. So I'm a sucker for that.
I think he's good. I actually think his coverage is decent in the box. And the slot is where I don't like it. So I'm a Penn State fan, so I've seen Brandon Smith forever. And he was this 5-star linebacker. And I have him lower too because he's so infuriating. It's just like, dude,
he's
like
not Micah Parsons.
I see, yeah, exactly, and I see that flashes, but it's like I think he's the worst run defender out of any linebacker that I've scouted so far.
Yes.
He's one of the worst pass rushers of any. Like it's just like the athleticism that you think would come up. Like the processing speed for me is just a big issue. Like this guy, you could see him thinking like too hard sometimes. Like, dude, you have this almost 100th percentile athleticism. Like, just go fly, and he hasn't done that yet. So. Yeah, he's got a high ceiling, but he's just like at Penn State. It was infuriating. It was just watching this guy every single game. It was like, dude, I know you could do better than that. Like I've seen it before. It's
also once again, I'm the high man. I have him linebacker 4, and Max is in the exact middle. He has him linebacker 6, and Nick has him linebacker 8. So
yeah, back the same top 10, but it's all over the place for
yeah,
us.
Literally, yeah, exactly.
Is it my turn? No, Donnie, it's your turn.
My turn. So I'm next on the list, number 4. A guy who came out of nowhere this year, like literally out of nowhere. Troy Andersen, the linebacker from guess what? Montana State.
Hell yeah.
Who the heck would have thought? Montana State. I love that. Well, obviously the competition's a question, but that's beyond the point. So Troy Andersen, let me give a backstory on this guy. So he goes to a small school, yeah. So obviously none of us have no idea who this guy is. Goes to the Senior Bowl, and Max has said this before, and I'm going to say it again. The Senior Bowl is meant for linebackers to fail. That's why Nakobe Dean and Devin Lloyd did not participate, because if they would have failed. Troy Andersen went in there and murdered it. This dude was spectacular in the Senior Bowl, and I know Boye Mafe and Jermaine Johnson were probably better, but I think he has to be in that tier of best Senior Bowls. Like, I think he has to be in that tier. So it catches Max's attention right away, and then he tells us about him. I'm like, all right, I'll take a look at him. And his tape is fantastic. It's a very, very good tape. And yeah, he's playing nobodies, but still, the Senior Bowl answers some type of competition question marks. Not all of it, of course, but it answers some of it. And why is he this high on our list? Because he tested as a 100% athlete, which is rare. It is very, very rare.
Only one other guy have done it before. Lorenzo Carter, the only one. Isn't he an edge too?
Yeah, he's an edge. I believe.
So that means Troy Andersen's the only linebacker who's ever been a 100th percentile athlete. Then.
Yes, and Brandon Smith was close to that, but not quite. He was
and
really
another
close.
guy we're going to get to was even closer, but yeah.
Yes, another guy was closer. But Troy Andersen is a guy who I had no idea who this guy was, and then goes to the Senior Bowl, dominates it, amazing athlete, good size, also played quarterback, apparently, in high school.
Love that.
So,
Chad's rat, baby.
He had some snaps and a lot of
except he can
Wildcat snaps in Montana State.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, I mean, he was a quarterback in Montana State for a year, and I don't know if this is true. I read it off some website. It's probably not true. It said he made first team in his conference for quarterback, which I don't believe. But if he did, that's...
They're like a legit FCS school, too. Like, they're not like a small...
Like, if he actually did make first team, and I don't believe it, and I tried to find it, and I couldn't find it anywhere. I couldn't even find some of his stats for, like, his defensive side of the ball. ESPN said he had 10 tackles the whole season.
Yeah, so, finding Troy Andersen tape was even harder. Trust me.
Yeah, it is very, very, very difficult. I had to deep dive big time to find tape for him, but I mean, he's amazing, dude. Like, yes, the competition level is the for real question mark, and he's still developing as a linebacker. I mean, he played quarterback for the most of his life. Like, he's basically the better version of Chaz Surratt. Like, his play recognition to me is really good. Maybe not on Chaz level, because Chaz's play recognition was like, holy crap. Like, his play recognition was absurd. But Troy Andersen's, I would say, is right below him. And I think he's more athletic. I think he's a good run defender. He's getting better in coverage. Each year he got better in coverage because I watched 2 games from last year and I watched 2 games from the year, or not the year before, 2 games in 2019 because in 2020 they had their season canceled due to COVID. But I watched it, and he was raw in 2019, and then 2021 looked so much better.
He was amazing in coverage this year.
Yes, amazing. I don't know about amazing. He was good. I think he was good. He was amazing in coverage at the Senior Bowl, but he was good in college, for my opinion. But either way, you're taking a swing for the fence on this guy, and just like Brandon Smith, who's big, athletic, and can play in coverage, I'm in. I'm in. You can't teach athleticism, and teaching coverage is the hardest thing to do. And some people can't even learn it. Shout out Dylan Moses.
I forgot to mention this for my Channing Tindall thing, but you mentioned the Senior Bowl dying. Like, the only 2 linebackers I think actually killed it were Troy Andersen and Channing Tindall. I think those are the only 2 linebackers that actually performed well. Like, Brian Asamoah I thought was bad. Chad Muma had a rough Senior Bowl even too. But I thought those 2 did a really, really good job.
You're set up to fail in it, and they should learn this by now.
You're set up to fail, and the fact that those 2 were awesome was that's good. That's cool. That's good to see. Troy Andersen, if he didn't have that Senior Bowl, if he tested as a 100 percentile athlete, then it's all right. It's tough, but the Senior Bowl
that Senior Bowl made him a lot of money.
Oh,
I just want to say congratulations, Troy Andersen. I don't typically like these freaky, athletic, smaller school guys unless you dominate the Senior Bowl, which he did. That's why as you guys know, I'm a huge fan of Christian Watson. Smaller school, big, athletic, but he dominated the Senior Bowl, and I respect that a lot. So I love Troy Andersen. I think he's not going to be great right away, most likely, but the ceiling
is crazy.
I would say, is it crazy to say the highest ceiling out of any linebacker in this draft?
No, absolutely not. I think he's got it. I mean, like I said, there's no one's ever been more athletic than him in combine history. So it's incredible. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Troy Andersen. I thought I was a Troy Andersen guy, and Donnie's actually jumped me now for where he's ranked him.
Yeah, I have him linebacker 3.
Which is interesting because my linebacker 3 is our linebacker 3, and that is Leo Chenal, the linebacker from Wisconsin. And he's a guy who tested out 99.9th percentile at the linebacker position, which is insane. Literally, he's tied with Manny Lawson for the best, and then right above Luke Kuechly as well. It tests out 99.8. So, Troy Andersen's there. Lorenzo Carter, depending on where you have him. He played edge in the NFL, so I don't think you should count him. But then Leo Chenal, Manny Lawson, Luke Kuechly. That's pretty good if you're right above Luke Kuechly. He's one of the greatest linebackers of this generation. Leo Chenal is just not a guy you want going backwards, ever. You don't want him going backwards in coverage. That's where I think you see some issues. I don't think he's great in coverage in the box. In the slot, I thought he was a little bit better, but he's just not a guy who's going to make many plays in coverage. What he is, though, is he is the best run defending linebacker in this draft. And I don't think it's very close. I think he's the best run defending linebacker in this draft by far. Maybe even he's up there for, I would say maybe is the best pass rushing linebacker too. Like, this is a guy who you just want going downhill full speed because his explosiveness and his power is absolutely ridiculous. Like, if he hits a blocker, even an offensive lineman, if he hits the offensive lineman, they're going backwards. Like, he is never going to be pushed backwards by an offensive lineman. So he is a just phenomenal athlete, 4.5, 340. He had elite jumps too. He put up 34 reps on the bench. Like, this is the type of play. Like, this is your classic. Like, he would be the number 1 overall pick back in 1990. But even so, his game still translates, I think, to today's NFL because of how athletic he is. He wasn't a liability in coverage. He's just not his strong suit. But if you on passing downs, I want this guy going full steam at the quarterback. I'm not comparing him to Micah Parsons, but it's a lot like that, where like you don't want Micah going backwards. You never want Micah going backwards. You want Leo Chenal going forwards at all times. And you saw Micah Parsons was this elite blitzer. I don't think Leo Chenal would be like that, where he could play legitimately and be one of the best edge rushers in the league. But I do believe Leo Chenal can be a guy that you blitz often, and he could be one of the best blitzing linebackers, one of the best pass rushing linebackers in the NFL, and one of the best run defending linebackers in the NFL, while also being one of the best athletes in the NFL. And PFF tweeted this out. Their highest run defense grades they've ever given out were number 1, Reuben Foster, who take off field. If he never got in trouble off the field, like, he could have been amazing as a linebacker. Yeah. And number 2 was Micah Parsons. Number 3 was Leo Chenal. So we're talking about like an awesome run defending linebacker and a terrific pass rusher. I just don't want this guy ever having to backpedal. I just don't want him to have to do that. And he's got the hips to do it. Not terrible in coverage, but like I said, I really just want this guy going full attack mode at all times.
Yeah, certainly a load there, and we'll play Mike at the next level. And a lot of teams, I think, are still are looking for all the linebacker positions. Quite frankly, it's not one position in particular, but the linebacker is kind of dried up. We haven't seen a whole lot of great linebackers in the NFL, but he will be one of the better box linebackers we've seen come out in a while. It's just about how teams value that in particular. Number 2 on our list is Devin Lloyd, linebacker from Utah, who is my linebacker 1. These other 2 have him as their number 2 behind. Who our number 1 is, it's Nakobe Dean. I'm just going to spoil it because I'm going to end up talking about it. I feel like if we were actually ranking and putting in the ranks, we might end up having Devin Lloyd being 1 because I have like them in separate tiers. I have Lloyd like 14th on my board or something, and Dean is like 30th. They're not particularly close, in my opinion. And the big reason for that is going to be, quite frankly, Dean, his size is big concern for me. And I compare a lot of these guys to Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. The film for me, I don't think approaches that level of play. I think Jock is a much better prospect, but we'll talk about Dean in a little bit. Lloyd is the most versatile linebacker this draft. I think you could put him anywhere. He could do whatever you want. Now, you want him closer to the line of scrimmage. That's where he thrives. And he did play edge for Utah this year, quite a bit, actually. I don't think he's great at playing edge. I don't know if I would do that at the NFL level, but it's possible. And it's why I referred to him in a previous video kind of as a Micah Parsons light. I don't think he's really going to have that impact at the NFL level. I don't think any of these guys, if I were to bet on it, have that impact at the NFL level. I think Micah Parsons is just like he's a generational talent. That is a real generational talent. That's what it looks like. It's Micah Parsons. You're probably not going to find that. And I hope teams don't go looking for it because it's really never going to be there, quite frankly. But what is he really good at? He has extreme length and jolt, something that is just not common from linebackers. You normally see the guys end up playing edge.
Oh, Nick, you cut out again.
And my mic is just going out. What is that?
Yeah.
Nothing's easy.
Oh, my heart, man.
Am I good now?
My heart hurts by Nakobe.
We good now?
Yeah, I'm good.
There you go.
You can start whenever.
What he does have is extreme length and jolt, which is extremely interesting for the linebacker position in particular, because normally when those guys come in, they end up playing edge full time and they end up trying to develop as an edge. And although he did play edge, it's clear that obviously he's coming out as a linebacker to the NFL, that the development curve he was on was to play linebacker to the NFL. And you can see why. He's a guy who plays extremely low. Even guys coming out of college, you don't necessarily see get used to playing low consistently. He does it very consistently, something I would not have a worry about at all at the next level. It's something that can help him overcome the fact that he's only 237 pounds, which is still pretty good size for a guy who's trying to play Mike, but it helps him when he's taking on those offensive linemen. And along with that jolt, that twitchiness in power, his converting his speed to power, and that length, it makes him a force in the box. I think his ability to leverage gaps in the run game is elite. I think his lateral feet and his ability to shed and then sit in traffic is fantastic. Dips when he blocks sheds, does it very quickly. His 40 time I don't have on hand. Oh, yeah, I do. He ran a 4.66, which is actually slower than I thought it was going to be, because I do think when he does get free as a pass rusher, he is closing on quarterbacks fast. He's a guy I think as your spy is going to end up being very helpful for you at the next level, quite frankly. I think he needs work and drop sense. I don't think he's an excellent coverage player right now. But I think last year I kind of got burned on trying to weigh the coverage thing a little bit too much with linebacker position, just because, quite frankly, like, they don't impact the pass game as coverage players as much, I think, as we'd like to think they do. Because, to be honest with you, they're just kind of sitting ducks. Like, they cannot run with most receivers. They kind of have to sit in their spots and hope that the quarterback doesn't make a great throw, which, there's a lot of good quarterbacks now. It happens. So I'm not as concerned about that with him, although I do think his length makes it so he can take up more space in drop zones, and it makes it less of a concern for me. I also think if you line this guy up on a tight end and he just try to, press him and just shove him at the line of scrimmage, he'd be very good at that, because I think he is just exceptionally strong for his size and has the agility to stay with guys. But this is a guy, again, like, if we talk about Christian Harris, and I like the ability that he has to just disrupt the box and just take over the game from there, I think this guy is that way plus, because he's much bigger. He's also a great athlete. I think he actually tested better, 96th percentile. Excellent. He's not going to have the all-around impact that Micah Parsons has, because he's not going to run as fast. He's not going to be as agile. But in terms of everything else, I think he does, to a degree, live up to it.
Yeah, I think he's the one I feel not best about, but I feel like he's the one that, like, probably the highest floor, I would say, of any linebacker in this draft. I would
which is kind of what I would look for at that position nowadays.
Yeah,
because I think it's like it's not that important. Like, if you want a good linebacker, you don't want to miss, because missing on a linebacker in the first round is, like, I can tell you personally, not.
I can too. I can too. We've taken 2 in a row.
That's
2 and yes.
Donnie knows better.
The first one is fine. Like, sure, Isaiah Simmons, yeah, okay, cool, I get that.
We'll give Zaven time.
Okay, yes, but like, why?
I know. Well, that why is a very
why? Just Isaiah Simmons, Jordan Hicks, and Isaiah Simmons are fine. We didn't need Zaven Collins.
I agree.
Like, my mindset was drafting him was, we're gonna throw him at edge. Nope, we didn't.
Yeah, Devin. Go back to Devin Lloyd though. Like, I do feel like he has the highest floor, and I think that is very valuable. He's probably the guy that I would feel most, like, comfortable with. But, like, there is Nakobe Dean, who I think just has a higher ceiling, and that, I don't know. I really struggled, ranking these two, because it is probably the toughest position I think I've had for who is the number one player at that position.
Okay, so I'm the high man on Nakobe Dean, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it, and these guys are probably going to look at me like I'm a psychopath. Nakobe Dean is my 4th highest graded linebacker I've ever given out to a linebacker, and I've been doing this since...
I need a 3. All right, I need a 3 now. Give me the 3. I want to hear him.
Okay, so number 1, I have Isaiah Simmons.
Okay, over Micah.
Over Micah, yeah, well, off fields, that's why. No off fields, then it's Micah.
Sure.
But off fields, yeah. So Simmons, Parsons, and then Roquan. I think he's a better prospect than Devin Lloyd. Or not Devin Lloyd, Devin White.
Yeah.
And it's not that I was low on Devin White. It's that this is how high listen, I think Nakobe Dean is special. Okay, so let's break it down. Nakobe Dean, to me, is the best coverage linebacker in this draft. And I don't really know if it's particularly close.
No, I don't
think
so either.
Like, maybe you can make a case for Brandon Smith, but like we kind of said earlier, like, yeah, he kind of struggles in the slot. So I love Nakobe Dean. He's the best coverage linebacker in this draft. I think he's a good athlete. I don't think he's quite on the tier of maybe Devin. Maybe he is. It's close. I think it's close. He didn't test, so we never really got an exact result, but I do believe he would have tested as a very, very good athlete. Also, he's not a Mike. He's an outside linebacker, so maybe you can say like that's a weakness. I don't care at this point. I really don't. Like, yeah, he's not a Mike, but some of the better linebackers in the league aren't Mike linebackers. Micah Parsons, Darius Slender, like there's great linebackers that are great in coverage that are not Mike linebackers, and you don't need to focus on just constantly just pushing offensive linemen back and being a huge tackler in the run game. Like, no, that is not Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean is Jock. What is he? He's a coverage linebacker who I trust you can put on tight ends. And yeah, there's the question of, is he big enough to cover tight ends? I think he's athletic enough to deal with tight ends. And listen, I know he's not tall, but he's got a decently thick build. Like, yeah. I don't know. I'm pretty sure he's 5'11", 230, 235. I think he's 235.
Like, yeah, 227 is what he weighed in at. But yeah, like, yeah.
Okay, so 230. So he's 5'11", 230. So he's a pretty thick guy. And just like I've been saying for this entire video, coverage linebackers who are athletic, I love them because it's so hard to teach coverage. It's so hard. That's why I was so high on Jock. Sorry. That's why I was so high on Jock, because Jock was, in my opinion, the best coverage linebacker in that draft, which is why I love Nakobe. And not to mention, way better competition. He dominated the SEC, and yes, he had unreal talent around him. He was the best player on that Georgia defense.
Yeah, I agree.
He was the best. He was better than Davis. He was better than Trayvon Walker. He was better than Wyatt, better than Seen, better than Andersen when he played. And Andersen, before he had his troubles, he was pretty good for them. Nakobe was the best. He was the best. Even the other linebackers, Walker and Channing, he was better comfortably than both of them. I'm in love with coverage linebackers because it's so hard to teach coverage. I think Nakobe Dean is special. I think he can cover tight ends. And people say, and I saw this on a scouting report, he's not fast enough to play in the run game, which I think is kind of stupid. I don't get that. I think he's perfectly fast enough to be a good linebacker in the NFL. Like, people question his speed because he's so much smaller. I don't see it. I see a very, very fast linebacker in Nakobe Dean. So, yes, I'm the high man on Nakobe Dean. I think I have him. Let me find it out exactly. I have him number 9 on my board. Yeah, that's probably higher than it should be, but I'm in love with him. I just love coverage linebackers because the hardest thing to do is teach a linebacker coverage. It is so hard. We've seen it multiple times in the past, and if you're good right away in coverage, I'm in. I think also, real quick before I let you go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Fantastic run defender, in my opinion. I think he's a very good, maybe better in coverage, easily better in coverage. But I think his run defense is getting a little underrated because some people are saying, "Oh, it's super bad." And I'm like, "No, it's not."
No, it's not.
I think it's not elite, but it's good. I think not better than Devin Lloyd, obviously, but it's still good. And he's a weak side linebacker, so I'm not really that concerned about it. So at the end of the day, I think Nakobe Dean is special. I think he's a special player with special coverage ability. And honestly, take away Isaiah Simmons, best coverage linebacker I have seen ever. Outside, at least in my time of scouting. So I've been doing this since.
Over Jock.
Over Jock. I do think so. Over Jock. Better competition, and he had a higher coverage grade than him. So I'm in. I'm all in on Nakobe Dean.
It's fair. Nick, what do you think? Because I know you have Lloyd.
Yeah, because again, I last year was really the first year that I really dove into specifically the linebacker position, probably because Washington drafted one, and I was invested in Jock because I was so high on him, and Micah obviously was a fantastic prospect. Last year was a very fascinating linebacker class, and I'm probably going to be diving into them this year in terms of their NFL film. And the one thing that stood out to me is, although I do value coverage, I think I phrased this wrong when I went earlier in the video. It's not that coverage doesn't matter that much. It matters more than anything else. It's that if you're really good at coverage and you can't impact the box, you're a slot cornerback. You shouldn't be playing linebacker. In which case, you need to be able to run. So there's two things here that concern me. And actually, I said size earlier. It's more of a height thing. It is height. Yeah,
I get it. He's 5'11". I get it.
Specifically length. And I think that really will show up in the box because Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Devin Lloyd both have 33-inch arms. Like, those are edge rusher arms. He's sub 32-inch, and that is like we talk about with arm length, like half an inch, like here and there, like more than an inch is like, it's a lot. So he's not like, I don't think he's ever going to be taking on. You don't want him ever taking on offensive linemen. Like, that's not something that he can do. He's going to be a C gap and outside run defender. He's very good at that. He has The speed at least shows on tape. I am concerned that he did not test. I need to see that. I don't know. Is the Georgia Pro Day coming up? Is that still?
I think it already happened.
It already happened. So
yeah, it already happened. Yeah,
and
he
that's
didn't.
a red flag to me. Like, I don't know why he's not testing in particular, because I think he does need to, because although, like, I think honestly at this point, I believe that we as a group are higher on him than the NFL is, because we saw what happened with Jock last year, and I don't believe that was all like Jock injury. Like, I think legitimately the NFL was lower on Jock just because he was a smaller will linebacker, and that's the way the NFL thinks.
I think he would have been. Sorry to interrupt you. I think he would have been at least a late first without the injuries.
The injury concerns, I think, what dropped him.
Yeah. Like,
but he went a long way. Like, he went to 52.
He did. He went
like,
a long
way.
Yeah. You should have been top 20 pick.
Azeez Ojulari, who I think's injury concerns were more concerning because they were like, oh, degenerative leg problem. He went before him. Like,
Yeah.
So, I do think the NFL doesn't value that a whole lot. And if that's the case, like, you need to be trying to use everything. And if you're not testing, that tells me that there's either you don't think you're going to test very well, or, maybe he's injured and we just don't know that, and he just falls on draft night because of that. I don't know, but yeah, those two things to me made me drop him on the board. I don't dislike Nakobe Dean. Like, I think he's still my linebacker too, and I for what it's worth, like, I just don't have a lot of first round grades, so he is a top 32 player on my board. I don't know. It's just that those two things, and honestly, comparing him to Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and what works for him, he's able to impact the box a lot, especially as a pass rusher, because of those arms, because of his ability to leverage against offensive linemen. And Dean is not, although I think his size isn't bad, he's not the type of player who's going to bowl over an offensive lineman, and he's not the type of player that's going to use like edge rusher type arm moves to get past him.
No, and I do think he's a phenomenal pass rusher, though, because I think his bend is unbelievable.
And I think his speed, like, you're going to bring this guy on blitzes. Like, that's going to happen. But I think that's expected from linebackers. At this point.
And the thing that I mentioned before with Quay Walker, where I was like, this guy plays 100 miles an hour, and you wish he was like, he's not thinking. Nakobe Dean is like, he's got, I think, the best instincts of any linebacker in his class. Like, there are plays where he is going so fast, and like, I didn't even know how he was able to recognize that. So I mean, his film study must be unbelievable, because this guy, he's going all out every single play, but also, like, you never see him like in the wrong position, which I think is really, really impressive. I think his coverage, Donnie mentioned, is great. I don't think you want him guarding tight ends, though, because of that length at 5'11". I will say that the wingspan is like identical to Nick Bolton, and Nick Bolton had a damn good rookie season for Kansas City. I remember how the size concerns for that. So maybe he can be, and I think Nakobe Dean's tape is way better than Nick Bolton's was. I think he's the best linebacker on passing downs because of his coverage and pass rushing. I think is unmatched in this class as a combination. The issues are the size, and I think, Nick, you said that perfectly. Like, there are a lot of times where I saw him get blown off the line of scrimmage by offensive linemen. Like, if they get a clean shot at him in the run game, like, it's tough for him because of how small he actually is. And he looks like a safety, honestly, when he's on the field. And another issue, he was the best player on Georgia's defense this year, but he did play with Devontae Wyatt. He did play with Jalen Carter. He did play with Jordan Davis. He played with all these defensive linemen, and they open up holes in the run game. And, like, that's an issue because you're playing behind an all-time defensive line. And how well will he play when he doesn't have that all-time defensive line in front of him? Like, because they open up a lot of holes so that he could just run right through and use that explosiveness that he has. So I don't know. A lot of people say Devin Bush for him, which scares me because Devin Bush has been frankly a bust for the Steelers so far. Like, he has not been a good player. He's a 5'11" linebacker like Nakobe Dean. Devin Bush stinks, Donnie. As a guy who watches the Steelers,
he was really good before injuries. He was good.
Devin Bush, no.
He was better than Devin. He was better than Devin White.
Yeah, I know that's not a high bar. That's not a high bar.
Okay, but
he's a good pass
rusher.
He was
bad.
Devin Bush is not good.
Look, I think this just proves that you shouldn't be taking linebackers in the top. Like,
Isaiah Simmons and Micah. We'll put them in the same
Micah
sentence.
Parsons was like, you can't miss, and Isaiah Simmons was a safety.
Yeah, like Nakobe Dean, I guess. Nakobe Dean's like a top 25. Like, out of the size is the biggest concern, but like the fact that he was that good in the SEC, I don't know, it's tough. It's like I said, it's a really difficult.
He's going to be one that we watch very closely. I think it's going to be a defining thing for this position, how he does.
Yeah.
Belichick, take him at 21.
Yeah.
Yep.
Please.
That would be awesome.
Please take him at 21.
And I've said this in
Like-
discussions because of what we talked about. Like, I think it's a great fit. I think they because I've seen the Patriots do this. I think they might trade back, get picks, and still get them. Like, that's just kind of how they operate.
Either way, man, like it's
fine. Like, cool. Like, it works for.
They're taking a defensive player. I know that.
Yeah,
They're not taking a wide receiver.
No,
they
they're
haven't
not
taken.
They got Devontae Parker. He's like a top 3 receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've only taken. I looked this up. They've only taken one receiver in the first round since 1996, dude. And it was N'Keal Harry with the last pick of the first round too. So barely a first round pick. That's the only first round receiver they have, which is unbelievable. But that's what we got for our top 10 linebackers in this year's draft. Obviously, we have a hot take because I think Devin Lloyd is kind of the consensus linebacker 1 for a lot of people right now, and Donnie and I disagree with that, which is why Nakobe Dean is our linebacker 1.
I would say it's consensus. A lot of people I talk to have linebacker 1.
I don't know, man. The most draft analysts I've seen have Devin Lloyd. So I don't. Maybe you're friends, but like I'm talking like the top.
That's fun. That's fair.
TikTok's on Dean. I know that. We've seen
TikTok.
that.
Yeah, but yeah, like I don't like.
Honestly, you're right. Yeah, I shouldn't be comparing draft analysts. Actually, I don't know. Mel Kiper and TikTok. Maybe their opinions are the same.
I don't know.
Mel Kiper is TikTok.
He's the OG. He's the OG. All right, that's what we got for our top 10 linebackers. Follow us again at Boomer Bust Draft on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Follow all of us too as well. And that's what we got in our top 10 linebackers. Check out WinView. They are freaking awesome. And baseball's starting up, which will be a lot of fun. Or if it's not very fun for you, like it is for me, I don't really love baseball that much, I'll still use WinView to make it fun.
Nats fan, so yeah.
I'll start watching baseball.
We're Diamondbacks fan. Let's just not talk about it.
Oh yeah, we're all
Well, I'm a Yankee fan, so it's not terrible. But yeah, so that's what we got for our top 10 linebackers. So for Donny Clemons and Nick Merriam, I'm Max Chadwick. Have a great night.